It is gorgeous. The rain is spectacular.
All right. I believe we are now live. So welcome to our Zoom reading
what play are we doing?
of Domestic Disturbances with the Shaw Project and the Instant Shakespeare Company presenting the reading of these 3 one-act plays. So over to you, David Cedar.
Good afternoon. The subject of today's readings is domestic disturbances, starting with Shaw's Overruled, and then moving on to a play by Alfred Sutro, who's not very well known these days, but who wrote wrote several plays, full-length plays and short one-act plays. We're doing one of the one-acts, of course. One of his plays is called The Fascinating Mr. Vanderfeld, and he's also famous for The Walls of Jericho. That was his biggest hit. And then we are doing a play by Charles Dickens, just for the fun of it, although it does fit the theme, called, what is it called, for heaven's sake? My mind is going.
Is She His Wife?
Is She His Wife? Thank you. All right, now we're going to start with Shaw's Overruled. So let me set the scene for the play. A lady and gentleman are sitting together on a Chesterfield in a retired corner of the lounge of a seaside hotel. It is a summer night. The French windows behind them stand open. The terrace without overlooks a moonlit harbor. The lounge is dark, and the 2 figures on the Chesterfield are in evening dress, and they catch the light from an arc lamp somewhere. But the walls, covered with a dark green paper, are in gloom. There are 2 straight chairs, one on each side. On the gentleman's right behind him, up near the window, is an unused fireplace. Opposite it, on the lady's left, is a door. The gentleman is on the lady's right.
Oh, don't be horrid. Please, Mr. Lund, promise me you won't be horrid.
I'm not being horrid, Mrs. Juno. I'm not going to be horrid. I love you. That's all. I'm extraordinarily happy.
You really will be good.
I'll be whatever you wish me to be. I tell you, I love you. I love loving you. I don't want to be tired and sorry as I should be if I were going to be horrid. I don't want to be tired and sorry. Do come sit down again.
You're sure you don't want anything you oughtn't to?
Quite sure. I only want you. Don't be alarmed. I like wanting you. I long. As long as I have want, I have reason for living. Satisfaction is death.
Yes, but the impulse to commit suicide is sometimes irresistible.
Not with you.
What?
Oh, it sounds uncomplimentary, but it isn't really. Do you know why half the couples who find themselves situated as we are now behave horridly?
Because they can't help it if they let things go too far.
Oh, not a bit. It's because they have nothing else to do and no other way of entertaining each other. You don't know what it is to be alone with a woman who has little beauty and less conversation. Oh, what is a man to do? She can't talk interestingly, and if he talks that way himself, she don't understand him. He can't look at her. If he does, he only finds out that she isn't beautiful, and before the end of 5 minutes, they are both hideously bored. There's only one thing that can save the situation, and that's what you call being horrid. With a beautiful, witty, kind woman, there's no time for such follies. It's so delightful to look at her, to listen to her voice, to hear all she has to say, that nothing else happens. That is why a woman who is supposed to have 1,000 lovers seldom has one, whilst stupid, graceless animals of women have dozens.
I wonder. It's quite true that when one feels in danger, one talks like mad to stave it off, even when one doesn't quite want to stave it off.
One never does quite want to stave it off. Danger is delicious. But death isn't. We court the danger, but the real delight is in escaping after all.
I don't think we'll talk about it anymore. Danger is all very well when you do escape, but sometimes one doesn't. I tell you frankly, I don't feel as safe as you do, if you really do.
But surely you can do as you please without injuring anyone, Mrs. Juno. That is the whole secret of your extraordinary charm for me.
I don't understand.
Well, I hardly know how to begin to explain, but the root of the matter is that I am what people call a good man.
I thought so, until you began making love to me.
But you knew I loved you all along.
Well, yes, of course, but I depended upon you not to tell me so, because I thought you were good. You blurting it out spoiled it, and it was wicked besides.
Not at all. You see, it's a great many years since I've been able to allow myself to fall in love. I know lots of charming women, but the worst of it is they're all married. Women don't become charming, to my taste, until they're fully developed. And by that time, if they're really nice, they're snapped up and married. And then, because I'm a good man, I have to place a limit to my regard for them. I may be fortunate enough to gain friendship and even very warm affection from them, but my loyalty to their husbands and their hearts and their happiness obliges me to draw a line and not overstep it. Of course, I value such affectionate regard very highly indeed. I'm surrounded with women who are dear to me, but every one of them has a post sticking up, if you'll let me put it that way, with the inscription, "Trespassers will be prosecuted." Oh, how we loathe that notice. On every lovely garden, every dell full of primroses, on every lovely fair hillside, we meet that confounded board, and there's always a gamekeeper around the corner. And what is that to the horror of meeting it on every beautiful woman and knowing that there is a husband around the corner? Oh, I have had this accursed board standing between me and every dear desirable woman until I thought I had lost the power of letting myself fall really and wholeheartedly in love.
Wasn't there a widow?
Oh, no. Widows are extraordinarily scarce in modern society. Husbands live longer than they used to. And even when they do die, their widows have a string of names down for the next.
Well, what about the young girls?
Oh, who cares for the young girls? They're sympathetic. They're beginners. They don't attract me. I'm afraid of them.
That is the correct thing to say to a woman of my age. But it doesn't explain why you seem to have put your scruples in your pocket when you met me.
Surely that's quite clear.
No,
Explain.
please don't explain. I don't want to know. I take your word for it. Besides, it doesn't matter now. Our voyage is over, and tomorrow I start north for my poor father's place.
Your poor father, I thought he was alive.
So he is. What made you think he wasn't?
You said your poor father.
Oh, that's just a trick of mine. A rather silly trick, I suppose, but there's something pathetic to me about men. I find myself calling them poor so-and-so when there's nothing whatever the matter with them.
Okay, but that was... oh, Lord.
What's the matter?
Nothing.
Nothing. Nonsense. You're ill?
No. It was something about your late husband when we were...
My late husband? What do you mean? Don't tell me he's dead.
But don't tell me he's alive.
Oh, don't frighten me like this. Of course he's alive, unless you've heard anything.
The first day we met on the boat, you spoke to me of your poor, dear husband.
Oh, is that all?
Well, afterwards you called him poor Tops, always poor Tops, our poor dear Tops. What could I think?
Oh, you haven't given me such a shock about him. I haven't been treating him well at all. Neither have you.
And you mean to tell me that you're not a widow?
Gracious, no, I'm not in black.
Then, I've been behaving like a blackguard. I have broken my promise to my mother. I shall never have an easy conscience again.
I'm sorry. I thought you knew.
You thought I was a libertine.
No, of course I shouldn't have spoken to you if I'd thought that. I thought you liked me, but that you knew and would be good.
Oh, I thought the burden of being good had fallen from my soul at last. I saw nothing there but a bosom to rest on, the bosom of a lovely woman to whom I could dream without guilt. And what do I see now?
Just what you saw before.
No, no.
What else?
Oh, trespassers will be prosecuted. Trespassers will be prosecuted.
They won't if they hold their tongues. Don't be such a coward. My husband won't eat you.
Oh, I'm not afraid of your husband. I'm afraid of my conscience.
Well, I don't consider myself at all a badly behaved woman, for nothing has passed between us that was not perfectly nice and friendly. But really, to hear a grown-up man talking about promises to his mother.
Oh, yes, yes, I know all about that. It's not romantic, it's not Don Juan, it's not advanced, but we feel it all the same. It's far deeper in our blood and bones than all that romantic stuff. My father got into a scandal once, and that was why my mother made me promise never to make love to a married woman. And now I've done it, and I can't feel honest. Oh, don't pretend to despise me or laugh at me. You feel it too. You said just now that your own conscience was uneasy when you thought of your husband. What must it be when I think of my wife?
Your wife? You don't dare sit there and tell me coolly that you're a married man.
I never led you to believe I was unmarried.
Oh, you never gave me the faintest hint that you had a wife.
I did, indeed. I discussed things with you that only married people really understand. I thought it the most delicate way of letting you know.
Well, you are a daisy, I must say. I suppose that's vulgar. Really, you and your goodness. However, now we've found one another out, there's only one thing to be done. Will you please go?
I ought to go.
Well, go.
Yes. I somehow can't. My conscience is inactive, but my will is paralyzed. Oh, this is really dreadful. Would you mind ringing the bell and asking them to throw me out? You ought to, you know.
Make a scandal in the face of the whole hotel? Certainly not. Don't be a fool.
Yes, but I can't go.
Then I can. Goodbye.
Can you really?
Of course I... Oh dear. I can't.
Oh, for heaven's sake, pull yourself together. It's a question of self-control.
No, it's a question of distance. Self-control is all very well and 2 and 3 yards off or on a ship with everybody looking on. Don't come any nearer.
Oh, this is a ghastly business. I want to go away, but I can't.
You ought to go. But if you try, I shall grab you on the neck and disgrace myself. I implore you, sit still and be nice.
I implore you to run away. I believe I can trust myself to let you go for your own sake, but it will break my heart.
I don't want to break your heart. I can't bear to think of you sitting here alone. I can't bear to think of sitting alone myself somewhere else. It's so senseless, so ridiculous, when I might be so happy. I don't want to be wicked or coarse. But I do like you very much. I do want to be affectionate and human.
I ought to draw a line.
So you shall, dear. Tell me. Do you really like me? I don't mean love me. You might love the housemaid.
No. Oh.
Oh, yes, you might, but what does that matter anyhow? Are you really fond of me? Are we friends? Comrades? Would you be sorry if I died?
Oh, don't. Oh.
Or was it the usual aimless man's lark, a mere shipboard flirtation?
No. Nothing half so bad, so vulgar, so wrong. I assure you, I only meant to be agreeable. It grew on me before I noticed it.
And were you glad to let it grow?
I let it grow because the board was not up.
Bother the board! I am just as fond of Sibthorpe as...
Sibthorpe?
Sibthorpe is my husband's Christian name. I often call him Tops to you now.
It sounded like something you drink. But I have no right to laugh, don't you? My Christian name is Gregory, which sounds like a powder.
That is so like a man. I offer you my heart's warmest, friendliest feeling, and you think of nothing but a silly joke. A quip that makes you forget me.
Forget you? If only I could.
If you could, would you?
No, I'd die first. I hate myself.
I glory in myself. It is a joy to be reckless. Can a man be reckless, I wonder?
No, I'm not reckless. I know what I'm doing. My conscience is awake. Oh, where is the intoxication of love, the delirium, the madness that makes a man think the world well lost for the woman he adores? I don't think anything of the sort. I see it's not worth it. I know it's wrong. I've never in my life been cooler, more businesslike.
But you can't resist me.
I must. I ought. Oh, my darling, my treasure. We shall be sorry for this.
We can forgive ourselves. Could we forgive ourselves if we let this moment pass?
I protest to the last, I'm against this. I have been pushed over the precipice. I'm innocent. This wild joy, this exquisite tenderness, this ascent into heaven can thrill me to the uttermost fibre of my heart. But it can't subdue my mind or corrupt my conscience, which still shouts to the skies that I'm not a willing party to this outrageous conduct. I repudiate the bliss with which you are filling me.
Never mind your conscience. Tell me how happy you are.
No, I recall you to your duty. But oh, I will give you my life with both hands if you can tell me that you feel for me 1/1,000,000th part of what I feel for you now.
Yes, be satisfied with that. Ask for no more. Let me go.
I can't. I have no will. Something stronger than either of us is in command now. Nothing on earth or in heaven can part us. You know that, don't you?
Say it. Of course I know. Nothing, not life, nor death, nor shame, nor anything can part us.
All right, this must be it.
Oh, that did it.
That was my husband's voice.
Impossible. It's only your guilty fancy.
Just the way to the lounge. I know it.
Great heaven. We're both mad. That's my wife's voice.
Ridiculous. Dreaming it. Wait.
Well, here we are. Sit down, I'm sure you're tired. That's right. Hello? Sofa's quite warm.
Is it? I don't notice it. I expect the sun's been on it.
Well, I feel it quite distinctly. I'm more thinly clad than you. And what a relief it is to get off the ship and have a private room. That's the worst of a ship. You're under observation all the time.
Why not?
Well, of course, there's no reason, at least I suppose not, but you know, part of the romance of a journey is that a man keeps imagining that something might happen. And he can't do that if there are a lot of people about, and it simply can't happen.
Mr. Juno, romance is all very well on board ship, but when your foot touches the soil of England, there's an end of it.
No, believe me, that is a foreigner's mistake. We are the most romantic people in the world, we English. Why, my very presence here is a romance.
Indeed.
Yes. You have guessed, of course, that I am a married man.
Well, that's all right. I'm a married woman.
Well, thank heaven for that. To my English mind, passion is not real passion without guilt. I am a red-blooded man, Mrs. Lunn. I can't help it. The tragedy of my life is that I married, when quite young, a woman whom I couldn't help being very fond of. I longed for a guilty passion, for the real thing, the wicked thing, and yet I couldn't care twopence for any other woman when my wife was about. So year after year went by, and I felt my youth slipping away without ever having had a romance in my life. For marriage is all very well, but it isn't romance. There's nothing wrong in it, you see.
Poor man, how you must have suffered.
No, that's what was so tame about it. I wanted to suffer. You get so sick of being happily married. It's always the happy marriages that break up. And at last, my wife and I agreed that we ought to take an holiday.
Haven't you holidays every year?
Oh, the seaside and so on. That's not what we meant. We meant an holiday from one another.
How very odd.
She said it was an excellent idea, that domestic felicity was making us perfectly idiotic, that she wanted a holiday too. So we agreed to go round the world in opposite directions. I started for Suez on the day that she sailed for New York.
That's precisely what Gregory and I did. Now I wonder, did he want a holiday from me? What he said was that he wanted the delight of meeting me after a long absence.
Could anything be more romantic than that? Would anyone else than an Englishman have thought of it? I dare say my temperament seems tame to your boiling southern blood.
My what?
Your southern blood. Don't you remember how you told me that night in the saloon when I sang "Farewell and Adieu to you, dear Spanish ladies," that you were by birth a lady of Spain? Your splendid Andalusian beauty speaks for itself.
Off. I was born in Gibraltar. My father was Captain Jenkins in the artillery.
It is the climate and not the race that determines the temperament. The fiery sun of Spain blazed upon your cradle, and it rocked to the roar of the British cannon.
What eloquence! Reminds me of my husband when he was in love before we were married. Are you in love?
Yes, and with the same woman.
Well, of course. I didn't suppose you were in love with two women.
I don't think you quite understand. I meant that I am in love with you.
Oh, that. Men do fall in love with me. They all seem to think me a creature with volcanic passions. I'm sure I don't know why, for all the volcanic women I know are plain little creatures with sandy hair. I don't consider human volcanoes respectable. And I'm so tired of the subject. Our house is always full of women who are in love with my husband and men who are in love with me. We encourage it because it's pleasant to have company.
And is your husband as insensible as yourself?
Oh, Gregory's not insensible. Very far from it. But I am the only woman in the world for him.
But you, are you really as insensible as you say you are?
I never said anything of the kind. I'm not at all insensible by nature. But I don't know whether you've noticed it. I am what people call rather a fine figure of a woman.
Noticed it? Oh, Mrs. Lunn, have I been able to notice anything else since we met?
There you go. All the rest of them. I ask you, how do you expect a woman to keep up what you call her sensibility when this sort of thing has happened to her about 3 times a week ever since she was 17? It used to upset me and terrify me at first. Then I got rather a taste for it. It came to a climax with Gregory. That's why I married him. Then it became a mild lark, hardly worth the trouble. After that, I found it valuable once or twice as a spinal tonic when I was run down. But now it's an unmedicated bore. I don't mind your declaration. I dare say it gives you a certain pleasure to make it. I quite understand that you adore me, but if you don't mind, I'd rather you didn't keep on saying so.
Is there then no hope for me?
Oh, yes. Gregory has an idea that married women keep lists of the men they'll marry if they become widows. I'll put your name down if that will satisfy you.
Is the list a long one?
Do you mean the real list? Not the one I showed to Gregory? There are hundreds of names on that, but the little private list that he'd better not see.
Oh, will you really put me on that one? Say you will.
Yeah, perhaps I will.
Ah,
Now don't begin abusing the privilege.
may I call you by your Christian name?
No, it's too long. You can't go about calling a woman Seraphita.
Seraphita?
Used to be called Sally at home, but when I married a man named Fun, of course that became ridiculous. It's my one little pet joke. Call me Mrs. Lunn for short, and change the subject or I shall go to sleep.
I can't change the subject. For me, there is no other subject. Why else have you put me on your list?
Because you're a solicitor. Gregory's a solicitor. I'm accustomed to my husband being a solicitor and telling me things he oughtn't to tell anybody.
Is that all? I can't believe that the voice of love has ever thoroughly awakened you.
No, it sends me to sleep. It's no use, Mr. Juno. I'm hopelessly respectable. The Jenkinsons always were. Don't you realize that unless most women were like that, the world couldn't go on as it does?
You think it goes on respectably? I can tell you as a solicitor.
Of course, all the disreputable people who get into trouble go to you, just as all the sick people go to the doctors. But most people never go to a solicitor.
Look here, Mrs. Lunn, do you think a man's heart is a potato or a turnip or a ball of knitting wool that you can throw it away like this?
I don't throw away balls of knitting wool. A man's heart seems to me much like a sponge. It sops off dirty water as well as clean.
I have never been treated like this in my life. I mean, here I am, a married man with a most attractive wife, a wife I adore and who adores me, and has never as much as looked at another man since we were married, and I come and throw all this at your feet. I, a solicitor, braving the risk of your husband putting me into the divorce court and making me a beggar and an outcast, and I do this for your sake. And you go on as if I were making no sacrifice, as if I had told you, it's a fine evening, or asked you to have a cup of tea. It's not human. It's not right. Love has its rights as well as its respectability.
Nonsense. Here's a flower. Go and dream over it until you feel hungry. Nothing brings people to their senses like hunger.
What good is that?
Oh, you don't love me a bit.
Yes, I do. At least I did. But I am an Englishman, and I think you ought to respect the conventions of English life.
I am respecting them, and you're not.
No. Pardon me, I may be doing wrong, but I'm doing it in a proper and customary manner. Now, you may be doing right, but you're doing it in an unusual and questionable manner, and I'm not prepared to put up with that. I can stand being badly treated. I'm no baby, and I can take care of myself with anybody. And of course, I can stand being well treated. But the thing I cannot stand is being unexpectedly treated. It's outside my scheme of life. So come now, you've got to behave naturally and straightforwardly with me. You can leave husband and child, home, friends, and country for my sake, and come with me to some southern island or say South America, where we can be all in all to one another. Or you can tell your husband and let him jolly well punch my head if he can. But I'm damned if I'm going to stand any eccentricity. It's not respectable.
Will you have the goodness, sir, in addressing this lady, to keep your temper and refrain from using profane language?
Gregory, darling!
You make love to another man in my face?
Well, he's my husband.
Well, that takes away the last rag of an excuse for such conduct. A nice word it would be if married people were to carry on their endearments before everybody.
Oh, this is ridiculous. What the devil business is of yours what passes between my wife and myself? You're not her husband, are you?
Not at present, but I'm on the list. I'm her prospective husband, and you're only her actual one. I'm the anticipation. You're the disappointment.
Oh, my Gregory is not a disappointment. Are you, dear?
You just wait, my pet. I'll settle this chap for you. You call me a disappointment, do you?
Oh.
Well, I suppose every husband's a disappointment. What about yourself? Don't try to look like an unmarried man. I happen to know the lady who you disappointed. I travelled the same ship with her, and...
And you fell in love with her?
Who told you that?
Ha! You confess it. Well, if you want to know, nobody told me. Everybody falls in love with my wife.
And do you fall in love with everybody's wife?
Certainly not. Only with yours.
But what's the good of saying that, Mr. Juno? I'm married to him and there's an end of it.
Not at all. You could get a divorce.
What for?
For his misconduct with my wife.
How dare you, sir, asperse the character of that sweet lady, a lady whom I have undertaken under my protection.
Protection?
Really, you must be more careful what you say about me, Mr. Lunn.
My precious. Pardon this betrayal of my feeling, but I've not seen my wife for several weeks, and she is very, very dear to me.
Oh, I call this cheek. Who is making love to his own wife before people now, pray?
Won't you introduce me to your wife, Mr. Juno?
How do you do?
I'm so glad to find you do credit to Gregory's taste. I'm naturally rather particular about the women he falls in love with.
This is no way to take your husband's unfaithfulness. You ought to teach your wife better. Where's her feeling? It's scandalous.
And what about your own conduct, pray?
I don't defend it, and there's an end of the matter.
Well, upon my soul, what difference does your not defending it make?
A fundamental difference. To serious people, I may appear wicked. I don't defend myself, I am wicked, although not bad at heart. Now, to thoughtless people, I may appear even comic. Well, laugh at me. I've given myself away. But Mrs. Lunn seems to have no opinion at all about me. She doesn't seem to know whether I'm wicked or comic. She doesn't seem to care. She has no more sense. I say it's not right. I repeat, I have sinned and I'm prepared to suffer.
You really sinned, Tops?
I don't remember your sinning. I have a shocking bad memory for trifles, but I think I should remember that, if you mean me.
Trifles? I have fallen in love with a monster.
Don't you dare call my wife a monster.
Please don't lose your temper, Mr. Lunn. I won't have my Tops bullied.
Well, then let him not brag about sinning with my wife. What pretension has he to such an honor?
I sinned in intention. I am as guilty as if I had actually sinned, and I insist on being treated as a sinner and not walked over as if I'd done nothing by your wife or any other man.
Hush!
I won't be belittled.
I hope you'll come and stay with us now that you and Gregory are such friends, Mrs. Juno.
This insane magnanimity.
Don't you think you said enough, Mr. Juno? This is a matter for two women to settle. Won't you take a stroll on the beach with my Gregory while we talk it over? Gregory's a splendid listener.
I don't think any good can come of a conversation between Mr. Lunn and myself. We can hardly be expected to improve one another's morals.
Oh, indeed. Oh, all right. If you come to that, we're talking about morals.
Well, now we are both equally guilty.
Pardon me, I am not guilty.
In intention. Don't quibble. You were guilty in intention, as I was.
No, I should rather describe myself as guilty in fact, but not intention.
What?
Really?
Yes, I maintain I am responsible for my intentions only, and not for my reflex actions, of which I have no control. I promised my mother that I would never tell a lie and that I would never make love to a married woman. I never told a lie.
Gregory.
I say never. On many occasions, I have resorted to prevarication, but on great occasions, I've always told the truth. I regard this as a great occasion, and I won't be intimidated into breaking my promise. I solemnly declare that I did not know until last evening that Mrs. Juno was married. She will bear me out when I say that from the moment my intentions were strictly and resolutely honourable, though my conduct, which I could not control and am therefore not responsible for, was disgraceful, or would have been had this gentleman not walked in and begun making love to my wife under my very nose.
Well, I like this.
Billy, darling, there's no use in the pot calling the kettle black.
When you say darling, may I ask which of us are you addressing?
Oh, I really don't know. I'm getting hopelessly confused.
Why don't you let my wife say something? I don't think she ought to be thrust into the background like this.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm sure. Please excuse me, dear.
Don't know what to say. I must think it over. I've always been rather severe on this sort of thing, but when it came to the point, I didn't behave as I thought I should behave. I didn't intend to be wicked, but somehow or another, nature, or whatever you choose to call it, didn't take much notice of my intentions. And I really did think, Tops, that I was the only woman in the world for you.
Oh, that's all right, my precious. Mrs. Lunn thought she was the only woman in the world for him.
So she is, in a sort of way.
But so is my wife. Don't you set up to be a better husband than I am. You're not. I've owned I'm wrong. You haven't.
Are you sorry, Gregory?
Sorry?
Yes, sorry. I think it's time for you to say you're sorry and to make friends with Mr. Juno before we all dine together.
Seraphita, I promised my mother that I would never...
Your mother! I beg your pardon.
A promise is a promise. I can't tell a deliberate lie. I know I ought to be sorry, but the flat fact is I'm not sorry. I find that in this business, somehow or other, there is a disastrous separation between my moral principles and my conduct.
There's nothing disastrous about it. It doesn't matter about your conduct if your principles are all right.
Oh, bosh! It doesn't matter about your principles if your conduct is all right.
But your conduct isn't all right, and my principles are.
Oh, what's the good of your principles being right if they don't work?
They will work, sir, if you will exercise self-sacrifice.
Oh, yes, if. You know jolly well that self-sacrifice doesn't work either when you really want a thing. How much have you sacrificed yourself, pray?
Oh, a great deal, Gregory. Don't be rude. Mr. Juno was a very nice man. He has been most attentive to me on the voyage.
And Mrs. Juno's a very nice woman. She oughtn't to be, but she is.
Why oughtn't she to be a nice woman, pray?
I mean, she oughtn't to be nice to me. And you oughtn't to be nice to my wife, and your wife oughtn't to like me, and my wife oughtn't to like you. And if they do, they oughtn't to go on liking us. And I oughtn't to like your wife, and you oughtn't to like mine. And if we do, we oughtn't to go on liking them, but we do. All of us. We oughtn't, but we do.
But my dear boy, if we admit we are in the wrong, where's the harm of it? We're not perfect, but as long as we keep the ideal before us...
How?
By admitting we were wrong.
Well, really, I must have my dinner. Those two men, with their morality and their promises to their mothers, and their admissions that they were wrong, and their sinning and suffering, and their going on at one another as if it meant anything or as if it mattered, are getting on my nerves. If you'll be so very good, my dear, as to take my sentimental husband off my hands occasionally, I shall be more than obliged to you. I'm sure you can stand more male sentimentality than I can. I, on my part, will do my best to amuse your excellent husband when you find him tiresome.
I call this polyandry.
You wouldn't call innocent things by offensive names, Mr. Juno. What do you call your own conduct?
I tell you that I have admitted...
So what's the good of keeping together?
If you won't listen to me...
What is the position now, exactly? I mean, what are we going to do?
What would you advise, Mr. Juno?
I should advise you to divorce your husband.
You want me to drag your wife into court and disgrace her?
No, I forgot that. Excuse me, but for the moment I thought I was married to you.
I think we had better let bygones be bygones. You will forgive me, won't you, Mrs. Juno? Why should you let a moment's forgetfulness embitter all our future life?
But it's Mrs. Lunn who has to forgive you.
Oh, dash it, I forgot. This is getting ridiculous.
I'm getting hungry.
Do you really mind, Mrs. Lunn?
My dear Mrs. Juno, Gregory is one of those terribly uxorious men who ought to have 10 wives. If any really nice woman will take him off my hands for a day or two occasionally, I shall be greatly obliged to her.
Seraphita, you cut me to my soul.
Serve you right. You'd think it quite proper if it cut me to the soul.
Am I to take Sibthorpe off your hands too, Mrs. Lunn?
Do you think I'll allow this?
You've admitted that you've done wrong, Tops. What's the use of your allowing and not allowing after that?
I do not admit that I have done wrong. I admit that what I did was wrong.
Can you explain the distinction?
It's quite plain to anyone but an imbecile. If you tell me I've done something wrong, you insult me. But if you say that something that I did is wrong, you simply raise a question of morals. I tell you flatly, if you say I did anything wrong, you will have to fight me. In fact, I think we ought to fight anyhow. I don't particularly want to, but I feel that England expects us to.
I won't fight. If you beat me, my wife would share my humiliation. If I beat you, she would sympathize with you and loathe me for my brutality.
Not to mention that as we are human beings and not reindeer or barn door fowl, if two men presumed to fight for us, we couldn't decently ever speak to either of them again.
Besides, neither of us could beat the other, as we neither of us know how to fight. We should only blacken each other's eyes and make fools of ourselves.
I don't admit that. Every Englishman can use his fists.
So you're an Englishman. Can you use yours?
I presume so. I've never tried.
You never told me you couldn't fight, Tops. I thought you were an accomplished boxer.
My precious, I'll never give you any grounds for any such belief.
You always talked as if it were a matter of course. You spoke with the greatest contempt of men who didn't kick other men down the stairs.
Well, I can't kick Mr. Lunn downstairs. We're on the ground floor.
You could throw him into the harbour.
Do you want me to be thrown into the harbour?
No, I only want to show Tops that he's making a ghastly fool of himself.
We're all making fools of ourselves.
Well, if we're not to fight, I must insist at least on your never speaking to my wife again.
Does my speaking to your wife do you any harm?
No, but it's the proper course to take. We must behave with some sort of decency.
And are you never going to speak to me again, Mr. Juno?
I am prepared to promise never to do so. I think that your husband has a right to demand that. And then if I speak to you after, it will not be his fault. It will be a breach of my promise. And I shall not attempt to defend my conduct.
I shall talk to your wife as often as she'll let me.
I have no objection to your speaking to me, Mr. Lunn.
Then I shall take steps.
What steps?
Steps, measures, proceedings. What steps may seem advisable?
Can your husband afford a scandal, Mrs. Juno?
No.
Neither can mine.
Mrs. Juno, I am very sorry I let you in for all of this. I don't know how it is that we contrive to make feelings like ours, which seem to me beautiful and sacred feelings, which lead to such interesting, exciting adventures, end in vulgar squabbles and degrading scenes.
I decline to admit that my conduct has been vulgar or degrading.
I promised to
Now
my
look here,
mother.
old chap, I don't say a word against your mother, and I'm sorry she's dead, but really, you know, most women are mothers, and they all die at some time or another, yet that doesn't make them infallible authorities on morals, does it?
I was about to say so myself. Let me add that if you do things merely because you think some other fool expects you to do them, and he expects you to do them because he thinks you expect him to expect you to do them, it will end in everybody doing what nobody wants to do, which, in my opinion, is a silly state of things.
Well, Lunn, I love your wife, and that's about all, and that's all about it.
Juno, I love yours. What then?
Clearly, she must never see you again.
Not.
Why not? I'm surprised at you.
Am I to speak only to men who dislike me?
Yes, I think that is, properly speaking, a married woman's duty.
Then I won't do it, that's flat. I like to be liked. I like to be loved. I want everyone round me to love me. I don't want to meet or speak to anyone who doesn't like me.
But my precious, this is the most horrible immorality.
I don't intend to give up meeting you, Mr. Juno. You amuse me very much. I don't like being loved. It bores me. But I do like to be amused.
But I hope we shall meet very often. But I hope also we shall not defend our conduct.
This is adorable. We've all been flirting. Need we go on footling about it?
I don't know what you call footling.
You do, you're footling. Mr. Lunn is footling. Can't we all admit that we're human and have done with it?
I have admitted it all along. All along.
Then stop footling!
Thank heaven! The dinner bell. Let's go into dinner. Gregory, take in Mrs. Juno.
But surely I ought to take in our guest and not my own wife.
Oh, Mrs. Juno is not your wife, is she?
Oh, of course. I beg your pardon. I'm hopelessly confused.
Afraid of me?
I am. I simply adore you. I have said to Mrs. Juno that I simply adore her.
Yes, dear. She's a darling. Now, Sibthorpe.
You have called me Sibthorpe. Thank you. I think Ludd's conduct fully justifies me in allowing you to do it.
Yes, I think you may let yourself go now.
Seraphita, I worship you beyond expression.
Sibthorpe, you amuse me beyond description. Come.
And curtain. Lovely, guys. Let's take, let's start the next play at 2 o'clock.
2 o'clock it is.
A little bit longer break, but we need it.
Dave? Where'd you go, Dave? You there? You're muted. Dave, do you have a sense of how long the other 2 plays are?
I would say, about, well, we should be done by, I think by not much after 3.
Okay, thanks. I gotta deal with an appointment thing here.
Yeah, okay. Anybody there?
I'm here.
I'm here too. Now my face is here as well.
I just decided, I think the next one we're going to tackle is Doctor's Dilemma.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I want you to do Dooby Dog.
Yeah.
But it's,
That was so funny. You know,
Sharon
God, I
Pace.
love Shaw.
Me too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing that in 2022, he's still just completely relevant.
Relevant.
Yep.
And like more to the point cutting than anything I see on people writing on stage
Yeah.
these days.
Yeah.
Yeah. And even though you can't help but like the people,
Yeah, because they're all human
they're all human.
and they're all absurd and they all think about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's great.
Some of us, I mean, in real life, a lot of people don't think about it, but
Right.
Shaw's people do.
I actually was just reading his piece on Ibsen, his the quintessence of Ibsenism, and it's really interesting because it kind of puts out his ideology about the difference between Philistines and moralists. In that Philistines, people are people who don't even have to question the status quo. Like it's super, like I just get married. Yeah. I just do this. Why not? And moralists are people for whom that's a difficult, like being married is difficult. And so they have to create morals around it and make it sacred. And they're the people who create anathemas of people that are really free thinkers, which is a really interesting way to put it,
Yeah.
That it's not because this is how I do things, but it's because this is it's difficult for me to, be married, that I have to hold marriage sacred, which is really, you see that in Shaw's plays, more than Ibsen, I'd say.
Yeah, well, Ibsen's darker.
Oh, yeah.
I love Ibsen too. This whole era, this is my era. This is my favorite era.
You
Victorian.
were born too late, right, Drew?
Way too late. I'm grateful for it, but also,
Me too.
I would have done okay.
Yeah,
Well,
you too, Dave. Yeah.
You read it really well.
Thanks.
You really are an Edwardian at heart, aren't you?
That's why I'm mustachioed.
I'm afraid
Even though it
that's-
makes my teeth look even bigger.
Oh, for crying
Mustachioed
out
and
loud.
pistachioed.
it's interesting because I think it has a lot of it. It's weird. It must have just seeped in from my family background. I mean, I can't, why my focus went in that direction. Well, I had a great aunt who was born during the Civil War, for example,
Wow.
who I knew as a kid. She lived to be 99.
That's
Wow.
very cool.
Yeah.
And the roots went way back there.
Yeah. The 19th century to me is just the most interesting century. I love it. I'm reading a book right now about spiritualism in the 19th century,
Wow.
which is really and the political situations and the radical political beliefs that people involved in spiritualism kind of had, which is really interesting. Like
And
the
I
roots
just-
of feminism and abolitionism,
yeah,
coming through spiritualist circles.
Wow, that's
I'm
interesting.
just finishing a mystery by one of my favorite mystery writer, John Dixon Carr. That is one of his historical ones. It's set in New Orleans in 1858, and it deals with voodooism and this kind of thing. And he's got absolute facts about the city and everything else, and it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Just the background of it.
Yeah. Although when I do think I do better than I think about air conditioning and I think about heat
Yeah.
and I think about even in California where we have fog air conditioning and, not terribly cold winters, it would still be miserable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think about women's issues, of course.
Of course, especially right now.
Well,
But even before, because I used to have a nostalgia for the past, as you sort of do. But then, for women, oh, forget it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I would have fared very well.
You've probably been okay if you're really, really wealthy. You could kind of hold yourself above and you could write, be one of those women that are head of groups that are
Yeah.
pushing for suffrage and
yeah.
whose lives aren't.
Difference.
I
Yeah.
have to say,
Wow. Oh, wow.
hot
think
showers and flush toilets, though, are,
Also very good.
But the other thing that I don't think I could have stood, although I would have, because I would have had to have, but is that everything becomes the man's property, that the woman had nothing that she could really call her own.
Yeah.
Once she married, if she didn't marry,
Yeah.
and her father died, then she inherited the wealth. But
Not
once
always.
she married, no, is that true, Rose?
Yeah, not always. Often estates would go to a male heir.
Oh, you're right.
And then
Yeah.
they would be responsible to sort of care for the women as
You're
best
right.
they could, or like if they chose to.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you're always
That-
at the mercy.
I mean, that would be tough.
Yeah, women becoming like the property of their brothers if their fathers died.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes. Yeah.
the
It's
care
interesting.
passes down the male line.
If you look
That's
like
in
that's why
England,
women become nuns a lot of the time, is because you're
Right?
out of the control. There's like even in Roman times, there's talk about the only people that are allowed to own property are Vestal virgins.
Mm.
That like if you are not married, that you can actually own property, but you have to living this very specific lifestyle. And those are the only women that could own property in ancient Rome. And it was like sometimes taken as a precedence when people making modern laws in like the Renaissance and stuff, and sometimes not. Kind of interesting.
That's crazy.
We better move forward.
Yeah,
The
you
next
could talk
play.
forever. Anyway.
Bracelet by Alfred Sutro. The dining room in an upper middle class house near the park. It is furnished in the conventional modern style, soberly and without imagination. The room is on the ground floor facing the street. 3 tall windows at the back are heavily curtained. The table, on which there is the usual debris of a meal that is over, coffee cups, liquor glasses, etc., has been laid for 4 persons, and their 4 chairs are still around it. The fireplace is in the center of the left wall, and uncomfortable-looking heavy armchairs are on either side of it. On the mantelpiece are a marble clock and a few bits of china. In the angle formed at the left side is a small Queen Anne writing table open. To the right of the room is a large sofa. The floor is heavily carpeted. When the curtain rises, the room is in darkness. William the footman enters hurriedly and switches on the electric light. He rushes to the table, looks eagerly around, shifting cups and glasses, napkins, etc., then goes on his hands and knees and searches on the carpet. After a moment, Smithers, the lady's maid, follows him.
Will you find it?
No, not yet. Give me time.
Under one of those rugs, perhaps.
Well, I'm looking. All right, all right.
Mrs. is telling him to do it.
Very like her voice too when she's angry. Drat that thing. Where can it be?
No good looking in there, stupid.
They always say it's in the unlikeliest place.
Come, haven't you found it yet?
No, Mr. Martin, it ain't here.
Well, it must be. She says that.
Well, I can't help what she says. It ain't.
Look, just you hustle, young man, and don't give me any of your back answers.
I tell you, she's cross.
Doesn't mind disturbing us in the midst of our suppers.
We're dirt. That's what we are. We're dirt.
William, I've told you before.
Oh, very sorry, Mr. Martin. But this is the first time I've accepted an engagement at a stockbroker's. Oh, Lord, now I've done it.
Clumsy.
Well, now that comes of too much talk. And never mind the curtain. Go on looking.
I say, not found it.
Not yet, sir.
Nuisance. Must be here, you know.
Is it a very valuable one, sir?
Oh, no, not particularly. But that's not the point.
When did Madam find that she'd lost it, sir?
Oh, about 5 minutes after we'd started. And we've turned over everything in the car. It's certainly not there.
Is Madam quite sure that she was wearing it, sir?
Yes, of course she was wearing it. I put it on her myself.
Where did Madam put her cloak on, sir?
In here. I brought it in.
You didn't notice whether...
Don't you think we moved all the rugs?
It must be here somewhere.
Well,
No trace of it.
a nice mess you've made of the room.
You told us to look, madam.
I'm afraid we shall be shockingly late, Alice.
I don't go without my bracelet.
Sorry.
It's you, dear.
I know, darling. One moment. What page are we on?
5.
Oh, quite right, dear. I wouldn't.
I know I had it while I was drinking my coffee.
My experience is one should never look for things. They find themselves.
Nonsense.
No, fact. At least one should pretend to be looking for something else. My glasses. Now, when I lose them, I declare loudly I can't find my cigar case. That just disheartens the glasses and they return at once.
Don't be so irritating, Tom.
No, that's all very well, but how about me? I was asked here to dine. I dined. I'm not complaining about the dinner, but now the curtain's up and here I am. Here I am watching half a dozen people looking very hard for a thing that isn't there.
Tom, it's those laughs you get in court that make you so fond of talking. Don't you see how you're vexing your sister?
Oh, I'm used to Tom. Harvey, I think you might be looking.
My dear, I've been turning round and round in this corner like a bird in a cage.
It's not here, madam.
That, I imagine, is perfectly clear. And I congratulate the witness on the manner in which he has given the evidence. Now, my dear Alice.
I don't go without my bracelet.
No, heaven forbid that I should speak slightingly of a gift of Harvey's, but really it isn't of such priceless value.
Well, that has nothing to do with it.
Of course not. All these men.
Oh, Tom's right. Let's go. Look here, I'll get you another.
Thanks. I want that one. Smithers, and you, William, just look again in the hall.
Yes, ma'am.
And then help the chauffeur. Turn out everything in the car.
Yes, ma'am.
Bring the rugs into the house and shake them.
Yes, ma'am.
Sumptuary laws, that's what we want. If women didn't wear bracelets, they couldn't lose them.
Martin, William is honest, isn't he?
Oh, hang it, Alice.
Quite, madam. Excellent character, a little flighty, but the most respectable young man.
I've seen him reading a sporting paper.
A weakness, my dear Alice, common to the best of us. I do it myself sometimes, but I'm willing to be searched.
Oh, Tom, do be quiet.
Very unsympathetic. None of the other servants came in after we left?
No, madam.
You're sure?
Quite sure, madam. They were all downstairs having their supper.
Most mysterious, incomprehensible.
9:30. We shall plunge into the play like body snatchers looking for the corpse of the plot, and we shall never know what it was that the heroine did.
Smithers, I'll answer for.
Yes, madam. If I might make a suggestion.
Well?
It couldn't have fallen anywhere into your dress, madam.
Nonsense, how could it? Absurd.
Into your cloak?
Silk. No, that'll do, Martin. You might help the others outside.
Now, admirable sister.
Did it strike you that Martin's manner was rather strange?
Oh, really? You must not suspect the servants?
Must not. Must. That's scarcely the way to speak to me, Harvey.
Oh, my dear.
And I wasn't suspecting. I was merely asking a question of my brother.
Come, Alice, let's go.
No, you three go. You'll excuse me.
If you insist.
No. Do come, Alice.
I can't. I'm so puzzled. Oh.
What? Have you found it?
Oh, no, of course not. But ring, please, will you?
Why?
I want you to ring. I just remember. Miss Farron came in while we were having coffee.
Alice!
I asked her to write a card to Harrods. She'll have written it in here.
I say, really?
No need to snub me again before our guests. I need scarcely say I'm not suspecting Miss Farron, but in justice to her...
But Alice, she'll have gone out. You told her she might.
No, only to her sisters close by, and she may not have gone yet. Why don't they answer the bell? Ring again, Harvey.
The poor things are still searching.
Alice, I protest. I do indeed.
Don't be so
think-
foolishly sentimental. It's ridiculous at your age. The young woman is in my employ as governess to my children. Has Miss Farron gone out yet?
No, madam, I believe she is in her room, dressing.
Ask her to come.
Yes, madam.
No sense of proportion, that's the truth. They've no sense of proportion.
Tom,
In fact, my dear, but you can't help it. You've every quality in the world, but just that. You will always look through the wrong end of the telescope.
really, Tom, this isn't the moment for your nonsense. And if you only knew how stupid you are when you try to be funny.
I say, I really do think.
I don't care what you think. Leave me alone.
Waltz me around again, will ye? Around, around, around.
You want me, Mrs. Weston?
Oh, Miss Farron, I've lost my bracelet.
Really? I'm so sorry. Where?
I don't know. You didn't see it, of course, after we'd gone.
No, and no one came in. I was writing the letter to Harrods.
No one at all.
No, I'm sure of that. I'd hardly got to my room when I heard the car come back.
Well, thank you, Miss Farron.
It's very annoying. You're sure it's not in the car?
My dear Miss Farron, it's not in the car, it's not anywhere, and I'm beginning to believe it never was at all. Come, Alice, let's go. We shan't see much of the play, but we can at least help the British drama by buying 2 programs.
Do you want me anymore, Mrs. Weston?
No, thanks. Oh, Miss Farron,
Yes?
I wonder whether you'd be so good as to shift this aigrette of mine. It's hurting me.
Certainly.
My bracelet!
Alice!
Oh!
No.
There it is. She took it.
Are you sure?
Alice,
Mrs. Weston, it isn't.
You dare to pretend?
let me look. I say, Alice, you're wrong. It's not yours at all. The setting's different.
Well, what do you mean different? You think I don't know my own bracelet? Are you mad? I say it's mine, and it is.
Alice, be careful.
Careful. You're as bad as he. Of course the thing's mine. I've been wearing it for weeks. You think I can make a mistake? She found it and took it.
No, Mrs. Weston, really, it isn't yours, I assure you.
Alice, I declare to you.
Be quiet and go away. This is no business of yours.
Well, it is. It was I who bought the wretched thing. Well, I am prepared to swear that this isn't the one.
You're prepared to... How can you talk such utter nonsense? This is not the least doubt. Not the least.
Alice, mind what you're saying. You'll get yourself into trouble. If Harvey says...
He's saying it to shield her. That's all.
I'm not. It's not true. But you mustn't bring such an accusation. It's monstrous. And I won't allow you...
You won't allow. The girl takes my bracelet and you won't allow.
Mrs. Weston, I haven't.
Alice, will you listen to me?
No, I won't. This doesn't concern you or anyone but me and this girl. Look at her. She knows.
Mrs. Weston, you're hurting my arm.
Come now, confess. I won't be hard on you if you confess.
Alice, will you hear?
Oh, you have hurt me. You have no right. You've no right to say such things.
No, you haven't. You haven't.
Besides, a bracelet like that. You won't confess? Very well then. I'll send for a policeman.
The bracelet is hers.
Turquoise and emeralds. Hers. A coincidence, perhaps. Very likely. I'll give her in charge at once.
The bracelet is hers, I tell you.
You dare to say that?
Yes, because I myself... gave it to her.
You gave it her?
Yes.
You asked me to believe that you gave a bracelet to this person? My children's governess?
I did.
An exact copy of the one you gave me.
I've told you it's not an exact copy. There's a difference in the setting.
Nonsense, nonsense. It can't be. He's just saying this.
Fanny, don't interfere.
I'm saying what's true.
I refuse to believe it. It's incredible. You've not sunk so low as that. It's a lie.
Alice!
Yes, a lie, a trumped-up story. The girl has taken it.
I have not.
You can tell that to the magistrate. And you too, if you like.
Alice,
Leave me alone, Tom. I know what I'm doing. I'll send for a policeman.
Alice! Alice!
I'll let the girl off if you'll tell me the truth.
I have told you the truth.
You persist in this silly falsehood.
It isn't, I tell you. It isn't.
Very well, then.
Madam, we have found.
Where did you find it?
It had fallen into the pocket of the car. There was a hole in the pocket and it worked its way right down into the body.
Very well. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here. I return you your property. And now pack up your things and leave the house.
No.
What?
I say no.
I have told the girl to leave my house.
My house, mine, and she shall stay in it. Or at least when she goes, it shall be without the slightest stain or suspicion.
I'm not accusing her of theft.
But you are insinuating. I declare solemnly before you all.
Harvey, one moment. I am sure that Miss Fallon would rather go to her room.
Oh, by all means. Here, take your bracelet. But don't leave this house. You understand that? I am master here.
Now, just listen to me, both of you. Be calm. All this excitement won't help. Harvey, you too. You and Alice will have your explanation.
If the girl doesn't go tonight,
I tell you again, she shall not. And there's no need. I was a fool to give her that bracelet. She didn't want to take it.
Why did you?
I had given Alice one on her birthday.
well,
And so I got her one.
why?
Because,
Well,
well, she admired it. And she liked pretty things too.
I don't think you need to say anything more.
No, he needn't. It's clear enough.
Look here, on my honor, I am fond of her, of course, in a way, but I'm old enough to be her father, and I swear to you all, well, I've seen her about, of course, a good deal, and I gave her that thing, but beyond that, nothing. Nothing.
A ridiculous fairy tale.
My dear Alice, take my advice and believe your husband.
You too.
All alike when there's a pretty face.
Let her find another situation by all means, but to turn a girl out at a moment's notice, you couldn't.
You are really suggesting that I should sleep under the same roof with a...
You are condemning without the slightest evidence, and condemning, remember, an utterly defenseless creature. This girl has a claim on you. Were you suspicions justified, she would still have a claim.
Indeed.
Nonsense he talks. It's really too silly.
You are extraordinary women. You exact such rigid morality from the governess and the housemaid. You're full of excuses when it's one of yourselves.
Tom!
No, well, it's true. We all know it. And here I believe every word Harvey has said.
You do.
Yeah, because he is a man of honor, and men of honor have their code. Their children's governess is safe. You will do well to believe it too. Now, Fanny, we'll go. Be sensible, Alice. I tell you again, Harvey's right. The girl must not be summarily dismissed. It would be an act of cruel injustice. Goodbye. Oh, as you like. Goodbye, Harvey, old man.
Goodbye, Tom, and thank you.
My poor dear Alice.
Goodbye, Fanny. I'm sorry that our party tonight was...
Oh, that doesn't matter. Poor thing. I promise you that Tom shall have a good talking to.
Now just listen. I'm going to speak to you. I'm going to say things that have been in my heart, in my life for years. I'm not going to spare you. I'm going to tell you the truth, and the truth, and the truth.
It's the same kind of truth you've been giving us tonight.
We've been married 10 years. Oh, I know we were neither of us very young, but anyhow, the last 5 have been nothing but misery for me. Misery. Do you hear that? You sitting there calm and collected, not caring one damn for me?
That's not true.
It is, and you know it. The mother of my children. Satisfied with that. Never a word of kindness or sympathy. And as for affection...
We're not sweethearts. We're middle-aged people.
Well, I need something more. And look here, I'll tell you. The girl has made life worth living. That's all. I'd come home at night, dog-tired, all day in the city, sick of it, stock exchange office and the mud and the grime and the worry. And there were you, with a nod. Ah, Harvey, good evening. And you'd scarcely look up from your committee report or your blue book or your damned pamphlet or other.
You're one of the men who want their wife to be a mere sort of doll.
I want my wife to care for me. I want her to smile when I come in and be glad. I want her to love me. You don't. By the Lord, I've sneaked upstairs, gone in and had a peep at the children. Well, they'd be asleep. I tell you, I've been hungry for a word, for a look. And there in the schoolroom was this girl. I've played it low down, I know. She's fond of me. But I couldn't help it. I was lonely, that's what it was. I've gone up there night after night. You didn't know where I was, and you didn't care. In my study, you thought, the cold, chilly box that you call my study. Glad to have me out of the way. Well, there I was, with this girl. It was something to look forward to in the cab coming home. It was something to catch hold of when things went wrong in that dreary grind of money-making. Her eyes lit up when they saw me. She'd ask me about things. If I coughed, she'd fuss me. She had pretty ways and was pleased, oh, pleased beyond words if I brought her home something.
So this isn't the first time?
Oh, no, of course not. She admired that bracelet of yours. By Jove, I said to myself, I'll get her one like it. Whatever I brought home to you, you'd scarcely say thank you. And usually it went into the drawer. I'd such shocking bad taste. She'd beam. Well, as ill luck would have it, you took a fancy to this one. I told her she mustn't wear hers.
Firing behind my back?
Oh, if you knew what has gone on behind your back. Not when I was with her, but when I was alone. The things I said about you to myself, when I thought of this miserable life that had to be dragged on here, and the thought of your superior smile, your damnable cruelty.
Cruelty? Why?
What else? I'd go up to you timidly. Why talk of it? To you, I've been the machine that made money. Money to pay for the house and the car and the dressmaker's bills. A machine that had to be fed. And when you'd done that, you'd done all. Well, there was this girl.
You had your children?
A boy of 7 and a girl of 5. In bed when I came home. And your children much more than mine. I'm a stranger to them. And anyhow, I wanted something more, something human, alive, that only a woman can give. And she gave it. Nothing between us, I swear, but just that. As Tom says, I've not been such a cur, and you ought to know me well enough after all these years. But there is the truth. She's fond of me. She is. It's a fact. And I needed that fondness. It has kept me going. And now, do you think I'll let her be thrust out into the street?
No, stop now and listen to me. I've let you rattle on. Will you hear me for one moment?
Go on.
All those things you've said about me. Well, what's the use? I suppose we're like most married people when they come to our age. I've interests of my own that don't appeal to you.
Blue books and committees.
I do useful work. Oh, yes, you may snare. You always have snared. If a woman tries to do something sensible with her life, instead of cuddling and kissing you all day, she's cold and cruel. We've drifted apart. Well, your fault, as much as mine, more perhaps, but it's no good going into that, no good making reproaches. That's how things are. We must make the best of them. Wait, let me finish. About this girl. Granted that what you say is true, and I'm inclined to believe it.
Oh, at least thank you for that.
Or at any rate, it's better policy to believe it, for everyone's sake.
That's right. That's more like you.
We gain nothing by abusing each other, and I didn't interrupt you. Let's look facts in the face. Here we are, we two, tied.
Yes.
With our 2 children. If it weren't for them, well, we've got to remain together. Now there's this girl. It's quite evident after what you've said that she can't stop here.
She shall.
Do be a man and drop this mawkish sentiment. You say she's fond of you. You've made her fond of you. Was this a very pretty thing for a man of your age to do?
Oh, never mind my age.
Very well then, for a married man?
An unhappy man.
Even granting that. Though if you're unhappy, it's your own fault. I've always been urging you to go on the county council. What's to become of the girl if she stops here?
I don't know, but I can't let her go. I tell you, I can't.
Oh, if you knew how painful it is to hear you whining like this. It's pitiable, really. In the girl's own interest. How can she stop?
She must. I can't let her be turned out. It would break her heart.
What?
Yes, it would. She's very fond of me. That's the truth. I know I've been to blame, but it's too late for that now. She's romantic, of course, what you'd call sentimental. I dare say I've played on her feelings. She saw I was lonely. She has a side that you've never suspected, a tender, sensitive side. She has ideals. Well, do you realize what it would mean with a girl like that? No one knows her as I do. I'm quite startled sometimes to find how fond she is of me. Oh, have some sympathy. It's difficult, I know. It's terribly difficult. But she loves me. That's the truth. And a young girl's love, why, she might throw herself into the river. Oh, yes, you smile. But she might. What do you know of life with your blue books? Anyhow, I daren't risk it. By and by, there's no hurry, is there? And I have to put it to you. Be merciful. You're not the ordinary woman. You have a brain. You're not conventional. Don't act like the others. Don't drive this girl out of the house. It would end in tragedy, believe me.
You can't really expect me to keep a girl here as governess to my children, who, as you say, is in love with you.
I expect you. I'm asking you to help her and me.
That's too much. We won't turn her up tonight. I'll give her a reference and all that, but she can't.
Alice, I can't let her go.
Ask Tom, ask anyone. They'll tell you
I
this.
tell you, I can't let her go.
Be sensible, Harvey. You must realize yourself there's no alternative.
I vow and declare to you, if she goes, I go too, and the consequences will be on your head.
Mrs. Weston, my things are packed and on the cab.
Oh, my poor child. You're not to go. I told you.
Of course I must. I can't stay here. That's not possible. My sister will take me in for tonight.
Miss Farron, my husband has explained to me. I withdraw all
That's
my...
all right. Though thank you all the same. It really doesn't matter much. I was going to give my notice tomorrow anyway.
What?
Well, I put it off as long as I could, Mr. Weston, because... But the fact is, I'm going on the stage. Musical comedy.
You are going
I've accepted an engagement. Oh, I'm only to be a showgirl at first, but they believe I'll do well. They've been wanting me for some time, and my fiancé has persuaded me.
You're...
Yes. My fiancé, yes. He's one of the comic men there.
I'll write a check for your salary, Miss Farron.
I ought to have told you, I know, Mr. Weston, but it was so dull here, and you've been most awfully good to me. I can never be sufficiently grateful.
Oh, don't mention it. And I hope you'll be happy.
Thank you. I mean to try.
Here, Miss Farron.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
If you should ever need a reference, don't be afraid to call.
Oh, thanks. No more governessing for me. Goodbye.
I'll take care that the next governess shall be quite as pretty as this one, Harvey.
Curtain. Interesting little piece, isn't it? Ladies and gentlemen, let's reconvene in, looks like about 6 minutes, 20 minutes of 3. Okay. Anybody there?
Yeah.
I'm here. I'm here. I need to rename myself though.
Yeah.
Who am
How,
I? Oh,
how
Limbo.
are you doing?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm okay. I'm living in a really nice little corner of the world where I seem insulated from all the troubles I see on TV,
Oh, please.
which is nice, but also like
I don't want
worse.
to go into that at the moment, but boy.
No, I know. It's a weird story to talk about. It's just hard not to, you know.
I posted something on Facebook if you want to check it out. But anyway.
I'm not on Facebook. Maybe that's the reason for my like
Oh.
bliss, my like pseudo bliss.
Oh. Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that you mentioned it, I've never, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't been on Facebook since 2019.
Oh, you were
Was my
on it.
last.
Dropped it.
Yeah, it's upsetting. It's great, but it's upsetting. So, yeah.
It's upsetting.
Social media. It just
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
It's, everyone
Yeah.
takes a tone that is argumentative and strange. And it's very weird when people you love, you feel like you can't talk to anymore. Because it used to be just disagree without, but without disliking people. And now...
Well, I can tell you, but I won't do it right this minute. It'll take a couple of minutes. Something that I had to say about the current situation, but if you're interested. But anyway.
Yeah.
No, it had to do with something my mother said, and now I understand it. I'll tell you later. We're gonna need to start in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Is Ben there? You back, Ben? We just got 2 minutes.
Oh, I'm here.
Oh,
Hi.
you're here. You're there.
Yes.
I think my timing is going to be just about right. I do wish more of the Charles Dickens one acts were online. I can't find. We did that one, and then we're doing this one, and the other one. There's a couple other delicious ones, and they don't seem to be out there unless you buy them. You know.
God damn it.
Yeah, they're fun. They
Who's
really have fun.
Who's benefiting? Whose estate are those in at this point?
I don't know.
Some weird publisher that was like, ooh, this isn't public domain. Maybe I can benefit from it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the poor 10 people that are interested in them like us are going to make them a buck.
I want to know why the heck none of Jack Buchanan's 1930s musicals are available. They just aren't. You can't find them anywhere.
Like to watch, like recordings, or even just this.
No, he did some wonderful ones. You know, there are recordings of songs from them, but the movies, can't find them.
Oh, interesting.
Anyway,
stuff's weird. There's so many people with a lot of different rights. Yeah, sorry.
All right, we are now about to tackle. We're going back to the Victorian period and tackling a Charles Dickens one act called "Is She His Wife?" or something singular. The scene one, this is play in two scenes, is a room opening into a garden, a table laid for breakfast, chairs, etc. Mr. and Mrs. Lovetown discovered at breakfast.
Another cup of tea, my dear? Oh, Lord.
I wish, Alfred, you would endeavor to assume a more cheerful appearance in your wife's society. If you're perpetually yawning and complaining of ennui a few months after marriage, what am I to suppose you'll become in a few years? It really is very odd of you.
It's not at all odd, my dear, not the least in the world. It would be a great deal more odd if I were not. The fact is, my love, I'm tired of the country. Green fields and blooming hedges and feathered songsters are fine things to talk about and read about and write about, but I candidly confess that I prefer paved streets, area railings, and dustman's bells after all.
How often have you told me that, blessed with my love, you could live contented and happy in a desert?
Artful impostor.
Have you not over and over again said that fortune and personal attractions were secondary considerations with you, that you loved me for those virtues which, while they gave additional luster to public life, would adorn and sweeten retirement?
Soothing syrup.
You complain of the tedious sameness of country life. Was it not you yourself who first proposed our residing permanently in the country? Did you not say that I should then have an ample sphere in which to exercise those charitable feelings which I have so often evinced by selling at those benevolent fancy fairs?
Humane man-traps.
You paid no attention to me. Alfred, dear.
Yes, my life.
Have you heard what I have just been saying, dear?
Yes, love.
And what can you say in return?
Well, really, my dear, you've said it so often in the course of the last 6 weeks, I think it quite unnecessary to say anything more about it. The learned judge delivered a brief but impressive summary of the unhappy man's trial.
I could bear anything but this neglect. He evidently does not care for me.
I wish I could put up with anything rather than these constant altercations and little petty quarrels. I repeat, my dear, I am very dull in this out-of-the-way villa. Confoundedly dull. Horridly dull.
And I repeat that if you took any pleasure in your wife's society, or felt for her as you once professed to feel, you would have no cause to make such a complaint.
If I did not know you to be one of the sweetest creatures in existence, my dear, I should be strongly disposed to say that you were a very close imitation of an aggravating female.
That's very curious, my dear, for I declare that if I hadn't known you to be such an exquisite, good-tempered, attentive husband, I should have mistaken you for a very great brute.
My dear, you're offensive.
My love, you're intolerable.
The wife around her husband throws her arms to make them stay. My dear, it rains, it hails, it blows, and you cannot hunt today. But a-hunting we will go, and a-hunting we will go, whoa, 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 and a-hunting we will go.
There's that dear, good-natured creature, Mr. Tapkins. Do you ever hear him complain of the tediousness of the country life? Light-hearted creature. His lively disposition and rich flow of spirits are wonderful, even to me.
They need not be a matter of astonishment to anybody, my dear. He's a bachelor.
How are you both? Here's morning. Bless my heart alive. What a morning. I've been gardening ever since 5 o'clock, and the flowers have been actually growing before my very eyes. The London pride is sweeping everything before it, and the stalks are half as high again as they were yesterday. They all run up like so many tailor's bills after the heavy dew of last night broke down half my rosebuds with the weight of its own moisture. Something like a dew, that. Regular dew, eh? Come, that's not so bad for a before-dinner one.
Ah, you happy dog, Felix.
Of course I'm happy. Felix by name, Felix by nature. What the deuce should I be unhappy for? Or anybody be unhappy for? What's the use of it? What's the point?
Have you finished your improvements yet, Mr. Tapkins?
Oh, a rustic lodge? At rustic lodge? Bless your heart. And so you never saw such a place. Cardboard chimneys, Grecian balconies, Gothic parapets, thatched roof.
Indeed.
Lord bless you, yes. Green veranda with ivy twining around the pillars.
How very rural.
Rural, my dear. Mrs. Lovetown, delightful. The French windows, too, such an improvement.
I should think they were.
Yes, I should think they were. Why, on a fine summer's evening, the frogs hop off the grass plot into the very sitting room.
Dear me.
Oh, yeah, bless you. Yes, something like the country, quite a little Eden. Why, when I'm smoking under the veranda after a shower of rain, the black beetles fall into my brandy and water.
No. No.
Yes, and I take them out again with a teaspoon and lay bets with myself which of them will run away the quickest. Then the stable, too. Why, in Rustic Lodge, the stables are close to the dining room.
No.
Yes, the horse can't cough, but I hear him. There's compactness. Nothing like the cottage style of architecture for comfort, my boy. By the by, I have left the new horse at your garden gate at this moment.
The new horse.
The new horse, splendid fellow, such action, puts out its feet like a rocking horse and carries its tail like a hat peg. Come and see him.
I can't deny you anything.
No, that's what they all say, especially the
I'm afraid you're a very bad man, Mr. Tapkins. I'm afraid you're a shocking man, Mr. Tapkins.
I think so. No, I don't know. No worse than other people similarly situated. Bachelors, my dear Mrs. Lovetown, bachelors. Eh, old fellow?
Certainly, certainly.
We know, eh?
Yeah.
By the by, talking of bachelors puts me in mind of Rustic Lodge, and talking of Rustic Lodge puts me in mind of what I came here for. You must come and see me this afternoon. Little Peter Limbury and his wife are coming.
I detest that man.
The wife is supportable, my dear.
Oh, to be sure, so she is. You'll come, and that's enough. Now, come and see the horse.
Give me 3 minutes to put on my coat and boots and I'll join you. I won't be 3 minutes.
Look sharp, look sharp. Mrs. Lovetown, will you excuse me one moment? Jim, those fellows never know how to manage horses. Walk him gently up and down. Throw the stirrups over the saddle to show the people that his master's coming. And if anybody asks what the fine animal's pedigree is and who he belongs to, say he's the property of Mr. Felix Tapkins of Rustic Lodge near Reading, and that he's the celebrated horse who ought to have won the Newmarket Cup last year, only he didn't.
I don't want to hear it.
My mind is made up. I can bear Alfred's coldness and insensibility no longer, and come what may, I will endeavour to remove it. From the knowledge I have of his disposition, I am convinced that the only mode of doing so will be by rousing his jealousy and wounding his vanity. This thoughtless creature will be a very good instrument for my scheme. He plumes himself on his gallantry, has no very small share of vanity, and is easily led. I see him crossing the garden.
Oh, my dear, it rains, it hails, it blows.
Would that I had never beheld him.
Hello, she's talking about her husband. I knew by their manner there had been a quarrel when I came in this morning.
So fascinating and yet so insensible to the tenderest of passions as not to see how devotedly I love him.
I thought so.
That he should still remain unmarried is to me extraordinary. He ought to have married long since.
Eh? Why, they are married. Ought to have married long since. I rather think he ought.
And though I am the wife of another.
Wife of another?
Still, I grieve to say that I cannot be blind to his extraordinary merits.
Why, he's run away with somebody else's wife, the villain. I must let her know I'm in the room. Oh, well, there's no telling what I may hear next.
Mr. Tapkins, bring your chair nearer. I fear, Mr. Tapkins, that I have been unconsciously giving utterance to what was passing in my mind. I trust you have not overheard my confession of the weakness of my heart.
No, not more than a word or two.
That agitated manner convinces me that you have heard more than you are willing to confess. Then why should I seek to conceal from you that though I esteem my husband, I love another?
I heard you mention that little circumstance.
Oh.
What the deuce is she owning at? She looks at me as if I were Lovetown himself.
Does my selection meet with your approbation?
It doesn't.
No.
Decidedly not. I'll cut that Lovetown out and offer myself Mrs. Lovetown.
Yes, Mr. Tapkins.
I know an individual.
An individual?
An individual. I may perhaps venture to say an estimable individual who for the last 3 months has been constantly in your society, who never yet had courage to disclose his passion, but who burns to throw himself at your feet. Oh, I'll try an O or two now. Oh, that's a capital O.
He must have misunderstood me before, for he is evidently speaking of himself. Is the gentleman you speak of handsome, Mr. Tapkins?
He is generally considered remarkably so.
Is he tall?
About the height of the Apollo Belvedere.
Is he stout?
Of nearly the same dimensions as the gentleman I have just named.
His figure is...
Quite a model.
And he is...
Myself. No.
Don't trouble yourself. I'll find it. Dear me, how could I lose it?
What have you lost, love? I should almost imagine that you had lost yourself and that our friend, Mr. Tapkins here, had just found you.
You will always have your joke. Funny dog, funny dog. Bless my heart and soul, there's that immortal horse standing outside all this time. He'll catch his death of cold. Come and see him at once. Come.
No, I can't see him today. I'd forgotten. I've letters to write, business to transact. I'm afraid I'm engaged.
No, if he's engaged, you know, we'd better not interrupt him.
Oh, certainly. Not by any means.
Goodbye, old fellow.
Goodbye.
Take care of yourself. I'll take care of Mrs. L.
Now, what the deuce does that fellow mean by laying such emphasis on Mrs. L? What's my wife to him, or he to my wife? Very extraordinary. I can hardly believe it, even if he had the treachery to make any advances, that she would encourage such a preposterous intrigue. She spoke in his praise at breakfast time. And they've gone away together to see that confounded horse. Stop. I must keep a sharp eye on him this afternoon without appearing to do so. I would not appear unnecessarily suspicious for the world. Dissembling in such a case, though, is difficult. Very difficult.
Mr. and Mrs. Peter Limbury.
Desire them to walk in. A lucky visit. Furnishes me with a hint. This Mrs. Limbury is a vain, conceited woman ready to receive the attentions of anybody who feigns admiration for her, partly to gratify herself and partly to annoy the jealous little husband whom she keeps under such strict control. If I pay particular attention to her, I shall lull my wife and that scoundrel Tapkins into a false security and have better opportunities of observation. Ah, they're here. My dear Mrs. Limbury.
Eh?
How charming, how delightful, how divine you look today.
Dear Mrs. Limbury, charming, divine, and looking beautiful today. They are smiling at each other. He squeezes her hand. I see how it is. I always thought he paid her too much attention.
Sit down, please, sit down.
Peter and I called as we passed in our little pony chaise to inquire whether we should have the pleasure of seeing you at Tapkins's this afternoon.
Is it possible you can ask such a question? Do you think I could stay away?
Dear Mr. Lovedown, how polite. He's quite struck with me.
Wretched miscreant, a regular assignation before my very face.
Do you know I entertained some apprehensions, some dreadful fears that you might not be there?
Fears that we mightn't be there? Of course we shall be there.
Now don't talk, Peter.
I thought it just possible, you know, that you might not be agreeable.
Oh, Peter is always agreeable to anything that is agreeable to me, aren't you, Peter?
Yes, dearest. Agreeable to anything that's agreeable to her. Oh, Lord.
By the by, Mr. Lovedown, how do you like this bonnet?
Oh, beautiful.
Oh, I must change the subject. Do you know, Mr. Lovetown, I have often thought, and it has frequently occurred to me,
No, don't talk, Peter. The colour is so bright, is it not?
It might appear so elsewhere, but the brightness of those eyes casts it quite into shade.
Now, I know you are a connoisseur of ladies' dresses. How do you like those shoes?
Her shoes? What will she ask his opinion of next?
Well, like the bonnet, you deprive them of their fair chance of admiration. You see, that small and elegant foot engrosses all the attention which the shoes might otherwise attract. And that taper ankle, too.
Her taper ankle? My bosom swells with rage of an ogre. Mr. Lovetown,
Pray, do not talk so, Limbury. You've put Mr. Lovetown out as it is.
Put him out? I wish I could put him out, Mrs. Limbury. I must.
I beg your pardon, sir, but the bay pony has got his hind leg over the traces and he's kicking the chaise to pieces.
Kicking the new chaise to pieces?
Kicking the new chaise to pieces. The bay pony. Limbury, my dear fellow, fly to the spot.
Oh, what, Mr. Lovetown?
Oh, he'll kick somebody's brains out if Peter don't go to him.
But perhaps he'll kick my brains out if I do go to him.
Never mind, don't lose an instant, not a moment. And now for it. Here's my wife. Dearest Mrs. Limbury.
Can I believe my eyes?
Allow me in one hurried interview, which I have sought in vain for weeks, for months, to say how devotedly, how ardently I love you. Suffer me to retain this hand in mine. Give me one ray of hope.
Rise, I entreat you, we shall be discovered.
Nay, I shall not rise until you promise me that you will take an opportunity of detaching yourself from the rest of the company and meeting me alone in Tapkin's grounds this evening. I shall have no eyes, no ears for anyone but yourself.
I will, I do.
And I am blessed indeed.
So agitated. If Peter or Mrs. Lovetown were to find me thus, I should betray all. I'll teach my husband to be jealous. Let us walk round the garden.
With pleasure. Take my arm, divine creature. I'm sure she is behind the screen. I saw her peeking. Come.
Faithless man. His coldness and neglect are now too well explained. Alfred, a little did I think when I married you, 6 short months since, that I should be exposed to so much wretchedness. Begin to tremble at my own imprudence and the situation in which it may place me. But it is now too late to recede. I must be firm. This day will either bring my project to the explanation I so much desire, or convince me of what I too much fear, my husband's aversion. Can this woman's husband suspect their intimacy? If so, he may be able to prevent this assignation taking place. I will seek him instantly. If I can but meet him at once, he may prevent her going at all.
This is certainly a most extraordinary affair. Not a partiality for me, that's natural enough, but the confession I overheard about her marriage to another. I have been thinking that after such a discovery, it would be highly improper to allow Limbury and his wife to meet her without warning him of the fact. The best way will be to make him acquainted with the real state of the case. He must see the propriety of not bringing his wife to my house tonight. Ah, here he is. I'll make the awful disclosure at once. I'll petrify him.
Oh, that damned little bay pony is as bad as my wife. There's no curbing either of them. And as soon as I have got the traces off the one all right, I lose all the traces of the other.
Peter.
Ah, Tapkins.
Hush, hush. If you have a moment to spare, I've got something of great importance to communicate.
Something of great importance, Mr. Tapkins. What can he mean? Can it relate to Mrs. Limbury? The thought is dreadful. You horrify me.
You'll be more horrified presently. What I am about to tell you concerns yourself and your honor very materially. And I beg you to understand that I communicate it in the strictest confidence.
Myself and my honor. I shall dissolve into nothing with horrible anticipations.
Have you ever observed anything remarkable about Lovetown's manner?
Anything remarkable?
Aye, anything very odd and rather unpleasant.
Decidedly. No longer than half an hour ago, in this very room, I observed something in his manner particularly odd and exceedingly unpleasant.
To your feelings as a husband?
Yes, my friend, yes. Yes. You know it all, I see.
What? Do you know it?
I'm afraid I do, but go on, go on.
How the deuce can he know anything about it? Well, this oddness arises from the peculiar nature of his connection with the... you look very pale.
No, go on. Connection with?
A certain lady. You know whom I mean.
I do. Oh, disgrace and confusion. I will kill her with a look. I'll wither her with scornful indignation. Mrs. Limbury, viper.
They aren't married.
They aren't married? Who aren't?
Those two, to be sure.
Those two? What two?
Like them. And the worst of it is she's married to somebody else.
Well, of course I know that.
You know it?
Of course I do. Why, how you talk, isn't she my wife?
Your wife? Wretched bigamist. Mrs. Lovetown, your wife.
Mrs. Lovetown? What? Have you been talking of Mrs. Lovetown all this time? My dearest friend. Oh, the revulsion of feeling is almost unsupportable. I thought you were talking about Mrs. Limbury.
No.
Yes. Oh, what I say, what a dreadful fellow this is. Another man's wife. Gad, I think he wants to run away with every man's wife he sees. And Mrs. Lovetown too, horrid.
Shocking.
I say, I oughtn't allow Mrs. Limbury to associate with her, ought I?
Precisely my idea. You had better induce your wife to stay away from my house tonight.
Oh, I'm afraid I can't do that.
What? Has she any particular objection to staying away?
She has a very strange inclination to go, and 'tis much the same. However, I shall make the best arrangement I can.
Well, so be it. Of course, I shall see you.
Of course.
Mind the secret, close, close. You know, as a cabinet minister answering a question.
You may rely upon me.
Scene 2, a conservatory on one side, a summer house on the other.
So far, so good. My wife has not dropped the slightest hint of having overheard the conversation between me and Mrs. Limbury, but she cannot conceal the impression it has made upon her mind, or the jealousy it has evidently excited in her breast. This is just as I wished. I made Mr. Peter Limbury's amiable helpmate promise to meet me here. I know that refuge for destitute reptiles is Capkin's favorite haunt. If he has any assignation with my wife, I have no doubt he will lead her to this place. A woman's coming down the walk. Mrs. Limbury, I suppose. No, my wife, by all that's actionable. I must conceal myself here, even at the risk of a shower of black beetles or a marching regiment of frogs.
Not have been mistaken. I'm certain I saw Alfred here. He must have secreted himself somewhere to avoid me. Can his assignation with Mrs. Limbury have been discovered? Mr. Limbury's behavior to me just now was strange in the extreme. And after a variety of incoherent expressions, he begged me to meet him here on a subject, as he said, of great delicacy and importance to myself. Alas, I fear that my husband's neglect and unkindness are but too well known. The injured little man approaches. I summon all my fortitude to bear the disclosure.
Now, as I could not prevail on Mrs. Limbury to stay away, the only distressing alternative is to inform Mrs. Lovetown that I know her history and to put it to her good feeling whether she hadn't better go.
Limbury, what the deuce can that little wretch want here?
I took the liberty, Mrs. Lovetown, of begging you to meet me in this retired spot because of the esteem I still entertain for you, and my regard for your feelings induced me to prefer a private to a public disclosure.
Public disclosure? What on earth is he talking about? I wish he'd speak a little louder.
I am sensible of your kindness, Mr. Limbury, and believe me, most grateful for it. I am fully prepared to hear what you have to say.
It is hardly necessary for me, I presume, to say, Mrs. Lovetown, that I have accidentally discovered the whole secret.
The whole secret, sir?
What secret? Whole secret? What
The
secret?
whole secret, ma'am, of this disgraceful, I must call it disgraceful, and most abominable intrigue.
My worst fears are realized. My husband's neglect is occasioned by his love for another.
Abominable intrigue. My first suspicions are too well founded. He reproaches my wife with her infidelity, and she cannot deny it. That villain Dickens.
Cruel, cruel Alfred.
You may well call me cruel, unfortunate woman. His usage of you is indefensible, unmanly, scandalous.
It is indeed.
It's very painful for me to express myself in such plain terms, Mrs. Lovetown, but allow me to say, as delicately as possible, that you should not endeavour to appear in society under such unusual and distressing circumstances.
Not appear in society. Why should I quit it?
Shameful woman.
Is it possible you can ask such a question?
What should I do? Where can I go?
Gain permission to return at once to your husband's roof.
My husband's roof?
Yes, the roof of your husband, your wretched, unfortunate husband.
Never.
Oh, she's thoroughly hardened, steeped in vice beyond redemption. Mrs. Lovetown, as you reject my well-intentioned advice in this extraordinary manner, I am reduced to the painful necessity of expressing my hope that you will, now pray don't think me unkind, that you will never attempt to meet Mrs. Limbury more.
What? And you suppose I am so utterly dead to every sense of feeling and propriety as to meet that person, the destroyer of my peace and happiness? The wretch who has ruined my hopes and blighted my prospects forever? Ask your own heart, sir. Appeal to your own feelings. You are naturally indignant at her conduct. You would hold no further communication with her. Can you suppose, then, I would deign to do so? The mere supposition is an insult.
Oh, what can all this mean? I am lost in a maze of astonishment, petrified at the boldness with which she braves it out. It's breaking upon me by degrees. I see it. What did she say? Destroyer of the peace and happiness? Person? Ruin hopes and blighted prospects? Her? I see it all. That atrocious Lovetown. That Don Juan multiplied by 20, that unprecedented libertine has seduced Mrs. Limbury from her allegiance to her lawful lord and master. He first of all runs away with the wife of another man, and he is no sooner tired of her than he runs away with another wife of another man. Oh, I thirst for destruction. Ha, ha, ha. Murderer of domestic happiness, behold your victim.
Alas, you speak but too truly. I am the victim.
I speak but too truly. He avows his own criminality. I shall throttle him. I know I shall. I feel it.
My husband, here.
Not here, and her husband with Limbury. I'll reconnoitre.
Lovetown, have you the boldness to look an honest man in the face?
Oh, spare me. I feel the situation in which I am placed acutely, deeply. Feel for me when I say that from that conservatory I overheard the greater part of what passed between you and Mrs. Lovetown.
You did.
Need I say how highly I approve both the language that you used and the advice that you gave her?
What? You want to get rid of her, do you?
Can you doubt it?
Hello? He wants to get rid of her? Queer.
Situated as I am, you know, I have no other resource. After what is past, I must part from her.
I should certainly throttle him, were it not that the coolness with which he refers to the dreadful event paralyzes me. Mr. Lovetown, look at me. Sir, consider the feelings of an indignant husband, sir.
Oh, I thank you for those words. Those strong expressions prove the unaffected interest you take in the matter.
Unaffected interest? I shall go raving mad with passion and fury. Villain! Monster! To embrace the opportunity afforded him of being on a footing of friendship?
To take a mean advantage of his being a single man.
Oh, to tamper with the sacred engagements of a married woman.
To place a married man in a disgraceful and humiliating situation.
Scoundrel! Do you mock me to my face?
Mock you? What do you mean? Who the devil are you talking about?
Talking about you!
Me?
A designing miscreant, of whom do you speak?
Of whom should I speak but that scoundrel Tapkins?
Me? What the devil do you mean by that?
Ah!
Oh, avoid him. Get out of his sight. He's raving mad with conscious villainy.
What are you all playing at? I spy, over my 2 acres of infant hay for.
How dare you tamper with the affections of Mrs. Lovetown?
Me? What the devil do you mean by that? Something's wrong.
I don't know where he went.
That's all.
All?
Oh, come, none of your nonsense.
Nonsense? Designate the best feelings of our nature nonsense?
Pooh, here, I know all about it.
And so do I, sir, and so do I.
Of course you do, and you've managed very well to keep it quiet so long. But you're a deep fellow, by Jove.
Now mind!
Deep fellow.
Now mind, I restrain myself sufficiently to ask you once again, before I knock you down, by what right dare you to tamper with the affections of Mrs. Lovetown?
Right? Oh, if you come to strict right, you know nobody has a right but her husband.
And who is her husband? Who is her husband?
Ah, to be sure, that's the question. Nobody that I know. I hope, poor fellow.
Damn! Bear these insults no longer!
Something singular among the plants. A flower that wouldn't come out of its own accord. I was obliged to force it. Tolerably full-blown by now, at all events.
My wife, traitoress. Fly from my presence, quit my sight, return to the conservatory with that demon in a frock coat.
Hello, somebody else.
My wife here.
I owe you some return for the commiseration you expressed just now for my wretched situation. The best, the only one I can make you is to entreat you to refrain from committing any rash act, however excited you may be, and to control the feelings of an injured husband.
Injured husband? Decidedly singular.
The illusion of that lady I confess my utter inability to understand. Mr. Limbury, to you an explanation is due, and I make it more cheerfully as my abstaining from doing so might involve the character of your wife. Stung by the attentions which I found Mrs. Lovetown had received from a scoundrel present,
That's me.
I, partly to obtain opportunities of watching her closely under an assumed mask of levity and carelessness, and partly in the hopes of awakening once again any dormant feelings of affection that might still slumber in her breast, affected a passion for your wife, which I never felt, and to which she never really responded. The second part of my project, I regret to say, has failed. The first has succeeded but too well.
Can I believe my ears? But how came Mrs. Peter Limbury to receive those attentions?
Not because I like them, of course, but to assist Mr. Lovetown in his project, and to teach you the misery of those jealous fears. Come here, you stupid little jealous, insinuating darling.
It strikes me very forcibly that I have made a slight mistake here, which is something particularly singular.
Alfred, hear me. I am as innocent as yourself. Your fancy neglect and coldness hurt my weak vanity and roused some foolish feelings of angry pride. In a moment of irritation, I resorted to some such retaliation as you have yourself described. That I did so from motives as guiltless as your own, I call heaven to witness. That I repent my fault, I solemnly assure you.
Is this possible?
Very possible indeed. Believe your wife's assurance and my corroboration. Here, give and take is all fair, you know. Give me your hand and take your wife's. Here, Mr. and Mrs. L, double L, I call them. Small italic and Roman capital. Here, it's all arranged. The key to the whole matter is that I've been mistaken, which is something singular. If I have made another mistake and calculated on your kind and lenient reception of our last half hour's misunderstanding, I shall have done something more singular still. Do you forbid me committing any more mistakes, or may I announce my intention of doing something singular again? Good. Bravo, everybody.
Hey, Dave, thanks for
Hard
putting
to do
that
a farce
together.
online, I'll tell you.
Thank you for finding all this great silliness for us. I'm really sorry. I have to run. But believe it or not, I have a patient outside.
Oh, okay.
Best
So I
Ben,
get out
thanks.
of here.
Bye, man.
Great work, guys.
Work everyone.
You too.
Well, that was fun, folks. Thank you.
I
That was
apologize for that script, which had different people's lines in different places.
Oh, really?
That's the only one they had online, and it was literally a paragraph all run together.
Oh no.
So I had to like individually, and I missed some elided lines in there. So
Yeah.
my
This is why, even though I'm frequently, castigated for it, I use hard copies. But anyway.
I need to dash too, but it was so
All right.
great to play with you guys. Thank you. Changed the whole
Really
tone of
fun.
my
It was
day.
fun, guys.
It
Yeah.
has to go at such a clip.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank
Oh,
you.
Cheerio.
Thank you.
Lovely work.
Thanks.
Yesterday
Lovely
we
work,
all did,
Rose.
we all did
Thanks.
Romeo
It was
and
great to
Juliet.
see you.
Yeah.
I have to say there's a sort of a I don't know what kind of Monty Python or something thing in there with the Friar Lawrence at the end. And he says, "I will be brief." Then he goes
Yeah.
on for 2.5 pages.
right. Yeah.
Well, Drew, good to see you again.
Yeah,
As
likewise.
always. David, thank you for inviting me.
Thank
And
you.
I'll see
Take
you guys
care.
later. Take
I'll
care.
do more of this soon. In fact,
All right. Bye-bye.
See
Bye.
ya.
Yeah, David, thanks for having me. And
you're
Drew,
welcome.
always
Take
good
care.
to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Hey, Drew, did Alice get in touch with you about that reading of Babes in Toyland?
She did, yeah.
Are you?
She did, but I haven't heard a follow-up. I said I was available, but she didn't ask.
Yeah, she hasn't come up with the date yet. I hope it happens.
Yeah.
I think it'd be fun to do,
Yeah.
especially since her version is going to be, when we finally get around to doing it.
Yeah.
Be fun to read a fuller version of it.
True. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny. The malleability of those scripts, of those types of musicals and operettas.
Yeah. Well,
You do a Victor Herbert thing, and it's just a totally different, almost storyline.
Oh yeah. Well, in the original, the toy maker, was a villainous character. He was in League with Uncle Barnaby. Would you believe it?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So
Yeah.
I don't know what version this guy has come up with, but this other young guy that she's doing this for.
Yeah, it'll be cool. It's interesting to see how different people string along
Yeah.
the string of pearls that are the musical numbers
Yeah. Yeah.
in these pieces.
Well, Ben has done her version twice as Uncle Barnaby.
Really?
I don't think she knows that because she wasn't involved at that point with the Little Orchestra Society. It was after Dino's death. So
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Did I ever tell you I was in college with Dino?
No.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I really didn't know him. He was in the music department. I was in the theater department.
Right.
We were both in an opera together. Well,
What do you know?
directed by Doc Stewart, who was, of course, established Ohio Light Opera. So
Oh yeah. Wow. Small world. Yeah.
the roots get all entangled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man.
Did I ever tell you my story, what I discovered about Ohio Light?
I don't think so.
I got curious because I've been working with so many Ohio Light people lately and stuff. And I thought, let's go back to the beginning. I want to see not just how many productions, I mean, individual productions, like every time, not necessarily just the operators themselves, but every time they did it. Out of 300 plus that they've done, and I have programs and a book about them that has annals that have at least either an actor or a director or somebody that I have worked with. Guess how many came up in the no column?
Hmm.
10. 10. Only 10 out of over 300. It kind of blew my mind. But I mean, in the beginning, a large part of that was because Doc Stewart was directing them. So I knew Doc Stewart, but still there were a lot of early people too, but like Nick Verman and people like that.
Wow.
So yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, did you get all the news about Stephen?
Yeah, horrible. What the heck?
Very sad. I really sounds like he's not going to make it. I hate to
Yeah,
say
I know, but it's hard to tell because when you're under those types of circumstances with the drugs and being in the hospital, who knows whether a mental state like that is permanent or what.
Well, I mean, he's got cancer.
Yeah, right. But
that's what killed the brain cancer, is what got the guy who ran the Gilbert and Sullivan company I toured with.
Oh my God.
And the thing is, it's that infection too, which they can't seem to take care of.
Right. God, yeah, just one thing on top of another.
Yeah, and when I got the message, I just broke down. That made me realize just how much, recent as it is, Stephen's friendship has meant to me.
Yeah, right. He was, I've just met him like the last 2 years. But
it's been about 3 or 4 years for me, actually.
Yeah, it's just kind of a shock to me.
Yeah. The odd thing too is that my ex-wife, my second ex-wife, costumed a production of the Trojan Women, the off-Broadway production. He was in it.
Oh, really?
I was in it. Yeah.
Wow. Man, it's terrible. I can't imagine what his wife is going through.
I know, and his kids too, and they were.
Yeah.
His kid, I think you've only got one child, daughter, right?
Yeah.
And she was hoping her father would see her grandkids and whatever,
Right. God. Yeah.
Between that and what's going on in this country right now, it's pretty upsetting.
Yeah, a lot of these are dark times.
Very dark. I mean, the abortion thing doesn't affect me, but it's, I care about.
Yeah, but it affects
friends who it does affect, everybody who it does affect.
And it sort of it's a slippery slope of, when the law enters the doctor's office, what comes next.
Yeah.
And it's a strange thing for the future of the Supreme Court, because ideally the Supreme Court is literally supposed to be a group of people who has no persuasions coming out.
Exactly. And of course,
they're there because congressmen and senators have their biases, and they're supposed to just uphold what's written down, interpreted. Yeah. And when people are being pulled, when people are being put in there based on their biases to sway one or another, that's just kind of scary. It
doesn't surprise me that Trump would do something like that. But
yeah, right.
But what I posted on Facebook was, I said something about my mother,
right,
lived to 104. In the years when she was living in, I guess it was after she moved to assisted living, or it might have been just before she moved out of the house, which she didn't do until she was 98. Said to me one day, when I was up visiting her, I don't think much of people anymore. Or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked, because everybody loved my mother.
Yeah.
And I mean, when I was growing up, we had, close friends, all kinds of friends and relatives, and there's a very warm atmosphere. And now thinking about it, I think I understand what she meant. I think she was looking at what was going on in the world even back then, and seeing how people were behaving. And what she meant was she didn't like people who were rude and stupid and selfish and cruel and all of that sort of thing. And I think that's what she meant.
Yeah. And our whole culture right now rewards stupidity, avariciousness, just,
and back then it was starting, and we're talking now the early 2000s, like,
Yeah.
2000.
Dishonesty, inauthenticity is one thing I think that is very encouraged now based on our social media
Yeah.
stuff. Like I understand. My grandpa always says, "I'm so glad I'm old."
Yeah, but I am a two at this point. I hate to say it. I mean, I still have a lot of things I want to do, but you know,
Yeah.
until,
Right. Yeah.
until I can't anymore. But the thing is, I'm worried about what's going to happen just to things that affect me with these
Yeah.
in this crazy court and the Republicans.
Yeah.
Now, if they start fooling around with Social Security and Medicare, I'm in big trouble.
Sure. Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's such it's kind of a Pollyanna statement, but we've always have each other and our small, like this, as terrible as the world is, there's still our small enclaves of, us coming together to read theater and the people we have dinner with,
Oh, sure, absolutely.
as cold comfort as that might seem in the scheme of things, it is where we spend most of our,
that's
time
true.
and effort, which is nice, which
Yeah.
is a
But
concept.
there's a thing I said it in the Facebook thing. I said it almost seems that the cruelty is the point when things like this, that Roe versus
Yeah.
what's
Control.
why, for God's sake,
Yeah. It's just amazing to me how many people have strange fundamental beliefs, because usually I imagine people in Washington as people that have very little fundamental beliefs who just use other people, like use the beliefs of the people, yokels Christianity or our, belief in justice to gain power, like I think of someone like Trump who doesn't have any sort of morals, but like appeals to other people's morals to get votes and insane power. But it seems like there's also a lot of people like, why would you want this to happen unless you had some fundamental belief, in
oh yeah, I mean, it's people who, but it's one thing to ban abortions, but to ban abortions, I mean, it's bad. I mean, that's bad, period. But on top of that, to say you can't even have one if you've been raped.
Yeah, right.
Or if your health is in danger from it.
Part of God's plan, right? That rape is part of
I
your.
don't believe that for 2 seconds.
Of course. No.
I mean, I'm an agnostic basically, but
me too.
I would believe if it were the case that if there is a God, that he wouldn't be that cruel.
I sort of whenever these things come up and like I say to people, if God really is of that opinion of the evangelical Christians, and if God is really so hateful and controlling, I'm on Milton's side and I'm going to rally behind Satan to overthrow him. Because a cruel creator is not one.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I won't believe that.
Yeah. Because the other option right now is that nothing means anything, which I think is the real spirit that has seeped into our consciousnesses in the last century. And so it's hard.
I guess that's nihilism, isn't it?
It is nihilism, and it's hard to argue with it when the other side is fundamentalism. It's just, we're in a difficult space psychologically and, philosophically, in addition to just socially. I mean, they're part and parcel, which is why we need more Shaw, more Ibsen, people that were dealing with this stuff at the very beginning of to understand ourselves and help us understand.
I intend to carry this on as long as possible.
Oh gosh, I only want to do these. I only want to do them in public now. I wish we had some money to do.
So do I. But
production.
You're there, and I'm. So part of the reason of being able to do it in Zoom is you're there and you can still do it.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm so glad we have
London,
it.
And he can still do it.
Yeah.
I want Angus for some things now. I've coming up too.
Yeah.
And that's part of the reason why I like doing it on YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, we have it for posterity too.
And just did a concert at the GNS. Finally, now after all COVID, it was an expensive proposition, but I did a concert at the GNS Society a week ago today, actually,
Hmm.
and with Ben and Vicky Devaney.
Oh,
and
great.
Paula.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
I thought we've got to pay a pianist anyway, because we used to be able to do these much more easily because we had a pianist. At one point we had two pianists who just loved doing them and didn't have to be paid.
Yeah.
So I thought, let's see if he's available and what his fee will be. And I got Bo Hicks to work with us.
That's great.
Yeah, he was terrific. And
Yeah.
he really had fun doing it too. So
Yeah. Anyway, you should probably get lunch and stop worrying about the world's issues.
oh yeah. But yeah, that's right, you're 3 hours earlier. So
Yeah, it's about lunchtime.
yeah.
So
All right, good talk to you. And
good talking to you too. I'll see you soon. I'll see you at least for the reading of whenever it happens.
well, let's hope so. Yeah. I mean,
So-
she hasn't told anybody who she's using yet, but
Yeah.
I'm sure she'll probably pick on us. So
I hope so.
I'm keeping the first that week open right now.
Yeah.
I did that at the first live Shakespeare reading yesterday that I've done.
Oh, what did you do?
We did, that's what we did. We did Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, and Dave Brown was able to get out and do it. And
Oh, nice.
it was a mixed bag because Vicky had trouble getting enough people.
Man.
The thing is, she waited. I mean, I know she's very busy with
Hey
it.
guys, just so you know, it's still streaming live, so I won't.
Oh, boy.
I will
Hey,
live stream
everybody.
the recording.
Hi, everybody listening. You want to hear us talk?
All of this has been recorded, so
Yeah, well,
there any way to
just
cut it
have been out
down?
rehearsing, so I've missed some of it,
Oh.
and I'm just.